I will start by saying that my name is Stina Sawata. I work in DG DevCo, and I'm part of the team that organizes the European Development Days every year. I would welcome you all to tweet as much as possible, but not so to the detriment of listening to the great conversation that we're going to have today. And I hope you will be using the app. I'll invite you to do a word cloud later, the app that we have for the European Development Days. We're here today for a conversation with young leaders, and we have a very exciting panel. It's going to take part in two parts. So the first part will be a conversation where we have the honor of welcoming first Vice President of the European Commission, Frans Timmermans. And I am particularly happy that you are here, sir, because I read your book or your pamphlet, Discovering Ties That Bind, last night. And there were two things that struck me on that. First is that we have to get to work, and I think that is what the young people will be telling us to. And then I was struck by your conversation of the difference between borders and barriers, and I hope that you will talk about those things, but I think that it's perfect for having this conversation. Our second panelist for the first part is David Nabarro, who is a special advisor on the 2030 agenda. He has also been the strong actor behind the Scaling Up Nutrition Network, and he's basically been working in this field and still with such a lot of energy for that many years. So thank you very much for joining us. We have our young leaders, Ruba Ahmed, Alan Nunes, Ruben Barret, Aisha Durrani, Nestor Dehungini, and Elsa Zekeng, who will all be giving their 2 or 3 minute pitches on the work that they have been doing. So we will have this, as I said, in two parts. The first will be Vice President Timmermans and David Nabarro, Ruba, Alan, and Ruben, and they will be discussing 3 themes first. Then Vice President unfortunately has to leave us exactly 3:15. And we will be joined by Marietta Jäger, who is Deputy Director General of DG DevCo, and Christian Leffler, who is Deputy Secretary General of the External Action Service, who will then discuss the other 3 themes with the other young leaders. Two last remarks for me. First of all, this is the second time we have a Young Leaders program, but it's the first time that we have been working with the Joint Research Centre in their EU Policy Lab for the last week. The young leaders have been working in the EU Policy Lab, developing and working and getting their ideas together to really have a concept. And I would like to thank very much the JRC for this excellent cooperation that we've had. The second thing is, I'd like us to be interactive. So unfortunately, panelists, I'm going to be quite severe in terms of timing, because I would like to give the audience the time to actually talk to us and come with some input. But first up, I would like to invite first Vice President Timmermans to give us some thoughts from your heart about young people and development and the key messages that we have to discuss today. First up, transforming mindset, activating youth, and maintaining and strengthening social fabric in times of conflict and crisis. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and I'm really excited to be here on one stage with you. I had the privilege of having a brief look at your CVs, and I can't imagine myself at your age having done that much. So really, congratulations, and especially the commitment you show to your communities, to your nations, to humanity as a whole is something that I find incredibly inspiring. And I hope, we can create around people like yourselves a positive dynamic that will transform our society, because we are on the verge of the 4th industrial revolution that will change our world. And the fundamental question we need to answer is, are we going to be the ones undergoing that change, or are we going to shape that change? That is something that the world as a whole will have to answer. And the ones who are going to determine whether we're going to shape it or whether we're going to be shaped by it are you, your generation. You are the best educated, healthiest, best connected education in humanity's history, but you're not in a position yet to use all that potential to actually be the transformative generation. Why? Because there's old geezers like myself still in power. And my first remark to you is, get organized. Because there's a huge difference between being connected and being organized. And I see it with my own kids. My two oldest kids are slightly older than you. But they are very, very good at understanding and seeing what's happening all over the world. And it's just a mouse click away from friends all over the world. And they have values and an opinion on everything. And they voice that, social media, in their contacts. But then my question is, what do you do with it? What do you do with it? And then the answer is, well, you should be doing something with it, which is right. But we need to be pushed more than we are pushed as a generation, by your generation. And I think that the misunderstanding between generations is that I was brought up at a time when being idealistic meant you had to go look for an ideology that would sort of formulate your idealism. What I see in your generation is that you are much more eclectic. You find values and things you want to fight for from different ideologies, ideas, and you put that together as your personal set of values, and you want to fight for that. But my generation and older generations then wonder, what are these people? Are they on the left, on the right? Are they with this and that? And you need to educate us, because that's your responsibility now. You need to educate us to understand how your brains are wired, because your brains are differently wired than ours. And only from the moment that we understand each other, and my generation starts respecting the way your brains are wired, are we going to shape the world as we want it to be. And we need to do this quickly. It is urgent. It is not easy. As we speak, borders are being built into barriers, which is, I think, one of the greatest threats to humanity. I'm not advocating that all borders should be removed. I'm only saying we should not turn borders into barriers. These barriers are physical barriers if we talk about the migration crisis, but they are more importantly political and mental barriers. The refusal to look at the world through somebody else's eyes is something that is on the rise, especially in my part of the world. So if we want to shape the world, we need everybody, every continent, every country, every society, every community. But to do that, we need to develop the ability to look at the world through somebody else's eyes, respect the difference, find a good way of disagreeing, and finding consensus on some of the biggest global issues. And you guys are going to do this, or you're going to fail. If you're going to do this, the world's going to be in a good place. If you're going to fail at this, we're all going to be in a bad place. But I have full confidence in what you can do, and you can count on me, and I'm here to learn from you today. Thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you.
David, would you want to add a couple of words before I let the young leaders pitch in to start their part of the discussion? Would you like to say a couple of words before I let the young leaders start their pitches?
Thank you. Great. Sorry, I wasn't sure whether my microphone was on. Thank you so much. I'm really pleased to be here. I'm beginning to understand that the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development cannot be implemented unless we all learn to look at the world through each other's eyes. I really took the remarks that we just heard from Vice President into my head, and I was reflecting on them. So I'm really thinking now that perhaps to get it right, we have to learn to look at the world through different sets of eyes. We have to be able to understand what's in other people's heads, and we have to be able to reflect what's in their hearts and in their souls. And I say this with feeling because partly the intolerance that the Vice President described does make it difficult to realize the 2030 agenda, but also because the 2030 agenda is something that we can only achieve if we build it together, in synergy. But we can only work in synergy if we are truly able to respect and understand and trust each other. So in the next few minutes, I look forward very much to hearing you all from your different cultures and your different experiences, sharing how things look through your eyes, how you think about them in your heads, and how you feel about them in your hearts. And then we will need to try to appreciate this as we, in our various positions, try to take this work forward. Thank you.
Ruba, Alan, and Ruben, I don't really envy you your task, because basically the work of the planet and of a generation is on your shoulders. We have your fellow young leaders sitting down here as well. But Ruba, if you would start your pitch on how to transform mindsets, then Alan will pitch in afterwards about transforming youth, and Ruben will pitch about maintaining and strengthening social fabric in times of conflict and crisis. All these things hang together very well, and I look very much forward to a brief presentation from each of you. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll start. So first, I'd like to say thank you to both of you for the great things that you just said. Mr. Timmermans, actually, a lot of the things that I'm going to talk about now are very related to what you just said. So when we say transforming mindsets, I first want to highlight that we use the term transforming instead of reforming or working within, because we don't want to simply think about what exists now and how we can work within it. But we also want to be able to think about how we can transform whatever systems we really feel like need to be transformed. So with that, we have a big focus on encouraging institutionalizing critical thinking. What do we mean by that? We mean that when it comes to governance structures or world systems or even educational systems, we really see the value in critical thinking, and we see that it's missing in a lot of curriculums around the world. So we've been privileged to have this opportunity and opportunities like it to look at the world from a lens that allows us to think about how can we change it? What do we want to contribute to the world? What are the things that we feel like are no longer working? And how can we think of new ways to organize ourselves? That goes along with reforming education, like I said, and institutionalizing critical thinking, not only in traditional realms of education, but also through online education that can be available to a great deal of people. And one thing we want to focus on, we spoke about tolerating differences. I think it's very important to say that we not only want to tolerate differences, we want to celebrate them. We want to say, I see that you're different. Don't agree with you on everything, but that's completely fine. It's wonderful that we are capable of thinking of different things in different ways, and it allows us to put those ideas together and come up with something entirely new. When it comes to my question for you, you said it yourself. We are working very hard. I know that my fellow young leaders and I, within our networks, within our localities, are dedicated and committed to actualizing change, especially with regard to critical thinking and transforming mindsets. But like you said again, it will be a while before we are actually decision makers. We have a little bit of time ahead of us before we have the power to really change the systems. And my question is, how is the EU and you and your colleagues going to really take part in that? What are your plans in creating a space, especially for young people and marginalized minorities and women, to be able to take part in reconceptualizing the way that we see our world? Thank you.
Thank you. Alan?
Thank you for the opportunity. Bueno, en este momento voy a...
I'm now going to speak Spanish, and thank you very much for what you've said to us as young people. And one of the key issues that we are concerned about is activating young people, making them key actors in all areas of our public life. And this is why we feel it's necessary to create areas where young people can be involved in creating public policy at all levels. Young people need to be taken into account when policies are developed. And it's also necessary to open up possibilities for participation at national organization level and at international organization level as well, to give young people a voice in those contexts. Also, the political involvement of young people is key when it comes to transforming their communities, their municipalities, countries, and the world itself. And that's why opening up areas for the political involvement of young people is vital, to turn those young people into actors, to enable them to take decisions that will determine the course of society. It's important to highlight, too, that we think it's important to institutionalize young people's involvement at all levels and in all sectors, not just when it comes to youth-specific issues, but young people have a lot to contribute in all sectors, say renewable energy, environment, health, for instance. So it's important to institutionalize the involvement of young people at all sectors and in all levels. Likewise, we think it's important to mobilize young people at local and global level. This will initially allow us to help put on the table at local and national level issues that are of concern to us, where we want to bring about change, but it'll also allow us to organize ourselves, to connect ourselves, so that together we can generate change in our communities. We think that we are a generation that is used to technology, to new technology, and we are aware that there are a means that will allow us to transmit the message of change that we want to get out there. And also it will help us to ensure that other actors in society become involved through these new technologies. We think that important progress has been made in the area of involving young people, but we now think it's important to consider different levels of participation of young people. Will young people be involved at a merely consultative level, where people will listen to us, we'll be able to express our concerns, or will we really become involved at decision-making level when it comes to taking decisions that affect us all? So we need to bring about a change as to the level of participation of young people. Furthermore, it's important to bear in mind that although young people's opinions are sometimes taken into account when it comes to drafting public policy, it's important to work alongside young people when it comes to implementing those policies, because that way you can achieve better and more substantial results. And it's for this reason that I'd like to put a question to the representative of the UN and the European Commission. And it is exactly that. What action is going to be taken to involve young people? They've been consulted, young people have, as to their views of the future, but how are they going to be involved in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, in work to that end? And also when it comes to financing the implementation, for instance.
Orban, can you talk about how we keep the social fabric?
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to take off with a recommendation from our world leaders here that we should organize as a young people. But the question is, are there governments giving the rights for these young people to be organized and to claim their rights from their respective governments? And this is one of the problems that we are facing right now, not only in Europe, but in the MENA region and other Southeast Asian region that we have in context. I think it is important that we maintain and strengthen the social fabric in times of conflict. We all believe that in a realist world, we all live in an anarchic system where powers are more centralized to states that are more developed, and these developed countries are the ones who give more financial assistance and humanitarian aids to developing countries. But I think that it is important that we need to recognize that even amid conflict, we need to institutionalize how can we make all these people remain dignified. How can we give them the right kind of system, educational system, that we can give to them? If we invest more into education, I think this is a more active prevention in radicalization young people. There are more or less 250 million who are children engaging in combat. And I don't think that we are creating a kind of world that is sustainable to begin with. If we don't invest in young people, I think SDGs is useless at all. Second, I think that it is important to recognize that all states have the power to change the world. But to begin with, I think that the issue of equal share of power in institutions is always at place. And moreover, on the idea of how do we mainstream, really, the integration of minorities in this kind of particular scenario is always in question. I think we need to open more spaces for young people in terms of political dialogues and participation, and how do we integrate the idea that the social fabric in conflict areas are strengthened instead of being fragmented. We see cases wherein developed countries, in some developed countries, they use armed responses as a way of protecting security. But the question here is, what is the level of accountability do we give to these developed countries wherein we somehow fragment the culture and the system of these particular developing states? Another question that I want to raise to the United Nations and to the EU is that in conflict areas wherein there is comprehensive process, most of the participants who are on the peace table are people who were also inflicted, say, for example, harms to the community. I don't think a comprehensive peace process would fly if the issue of social healing is always at hand. I think that we should give more a country-led concept of peace process to have more of a sense of local ownership instead of giving their path to other states. We need also to integrate the idea that we need to contextualize all conflicts before giving a concept of democratization in these particular nations. And what is the role of the youth? The role of the youth is to constantly seek accountability from their governments and from the international community, what is missing, and to continuously claim the rights instead of just waiting for government to give what is for them. And we, from the young leaders, I think there are so much thing that needs to be done, but I hope that outside of this conference, we will be able to materialize everything that we have said in all different panels. And I think that's it.
Thank you. Well done. Can I ask for short reactions from First Vice President Timmermans and from David before I open the floor for a couple of questions?
Sure, but I'll try and keep it short, but you've provoked me in saying so many things,
Good.
but I'll limit my
point.
comments to a few comments. First of all, I'm talking from a European perspective. And I'm asking you who are not from Europe to bring your perspective more to Europe. Because if you want to shape the world and if you want to take over from or complement or improve from previous generations, it's not going to happen if you sit down and say, give me a say, pretty please, with sugar on top. You will have to grab the opportunity. You will have to step on the stage and do this yourselves and claim the position. It is never given. People in power do not give up power because somebody says, please, please, please. They do it because they see it is unavoidable and it's for the greater good to share power. So that's, I think, something that would be my first remark. My second remark is this. Since your brains are physically different wired than ours because you were brought up with technology that has shaped your brains, where I was confronted with technology when I was already an adult, that is a physical difference between us and a difference in how we see the world and operate in the world. So you skid over so many things with lightning speed where we are still trying to combine these things. But the downside of that attitude is that sometimes it remains rather superficial. And what we can combine two generations is that you can teach us to combine more things, and we perhaps can teach you to go into depth in some subjects sometimes. That would be my second remark. My third remark is this. If we want to shape the world as it needs to be shaped, which is in a holistic way, this is no longer about single policies. This is a paradigm shift. If you want to do that, you need to avoid new barriers you need to respect, and I fully agree with you, frontiers. You need to respect difference. Difference is not a threat. Difference is an opportunity. Difference is something you enjoy. You need to find ways of bridging difference, of respecting each other's position. Even disagreeing well is very important. And then you need to find common ways forward. To do that, we will have to have a massive, massive investment in Europe and elsewhere in education. We need to teach people in charge that the percentage of our common wealth, of our total wealth that we spend on education is far too low if we want our younger generation, all of it, to be part of the transforming generation into the fourth industrial revolution. And I say this with emphasis because one of the barriers, there's a barrier now between generations. Okay, we said that, we work on that. But the barrier I'm much more worried about is the barrier within your generation, between those of you who are in your position and the hundreds and hundreds of millions of young people who do not have your opportunities and are completely out of touch with your world as you are completely out of touch with their world. So if we want to avoid that creating conflict in the future, our main task will be to make sure that everybody has an opportunity at education, everybody has an opportunity at understanding each other's problems, and that all of you understand that in your generation, there should be no winners and losers, that if they lose, you lose, if they win, you win. And I think we should put all our efforts together in terms of policy instruments to avoid barriers coming up on socioeconomic and educational, for socioeconomic and educational reasons. You see this in my society, in European society, new barriers. On the one side, the originals, on the other side, the newcomers. On the one side, people with education, on the other side, people without education. Very often the same people, by the way. And if we let that fester, our societies will turn into societies where fear is the dominating factor, where your headscarf is seen as something that is a threat to other people. You might not be able to imagine that, but people think that way these days, and we need to take that off the table, and only you can really do that successfully. Thank you.
Thank you. David, would you like to give a couple of first reactions before I open the floor?
Thank you very much. I just would just like to agree. I mean, I think we're both of the same sort of age. So everything that's been said I agree with, and I just say that I think a lot is happening now, and so I just want to appreciate that you're here, that you're doing three things. You're showing us things that are important to you, and then you're going to make sure that we see them in the way that you see them, and then I think you're also positioning ourselves to check on us to make sure that we've done it. And personally, I think that's an incredibly important set of actions. Show us, then make sure we do it, and then check on us. And if you could do that, not just yourselves, but networking with your colleagues and your friends, then that will, I believe, create a force of power that will bring some of the changes that I know you want. Thanks.
Thank you. Can I open, we're going to do it the old-fashioned way, so I'm going to ask for somebody to put up their hand and ask a question, and when you stand up, there should be microphones going around. When you stand up, if you don't mind saying your name and where you're from, please. Yes, sir, you there.
Okay, thanks a lot. I am Paul, first counselor at the Permanent Mission of Senegal to Brussels. Well, I just wanted to make one or two observations. because I think that it's a very, very critical exchange you have today between the two elders and the youngs. So I think that it's a very creative dialogue, and what you call generation dialogue. But the inspiration I had when listening to your discussion, your very, very critical discussion, was the world needs to be changed, needs to be transformed. And to be transformed, young people should have the capacity to shape the world that is to be transformed. Now, the problem is, and I think the Vice President Timmermans raised it, the young people today, they were educated, or they are educated in a different technological and intellectual context. So the context is shaped in such a way that they can get a great deal of information, a great deal of detailed information, but they don't have a global perception of things. And I think it's related to the fact that what one of them was calling institutionalizing critical thinking. And I think this is a great challenge that is expected from you, how to institutionalize critical thinking. And I will just quote two famous writers you may know. The first one is former US Secretary of State, Henry Kissinger. He wrote, I think it's his last book, entitled World Order. And in one of the chapters, he devoted a very deep reflection on the impact of new technologies, and namely the impact of internet in the way international relations are perceived, in the way the world is understood and conceptualized. And one of the conclusions to which he arrived at was nowadays we have to be very careful about technology when shaping foreign policy or any kind of policy, because with the new technologies, we don't have enough time. We don't have enough time to look at distance, what is happening before us. While when you want really to transform the world, when you want to shape things, you must take enough time to think, to reflect, and to put things in perspective. So that's the conclusion of Kissinger.
Could you wrap up, because we need to have space for a couple of other questions.
I will do it quickly. Another writer is a French one. His name is Edgar Morin. I think you know him. So Edgar Morin, what is he proposing in this debate? Why people have a lot of knowledge and they don't try to have a global understanding of all those detailed, different set of knowledges. He says we must use what he calls la pensée complexe. La pensée complexe meaning you must have a complex approach when trying to explain and to understand the current world. Because if you don't use a global approach, you won't be consonant with the kind of global world we are in. Because when you go to university, you learn different things while the world is global. So we should have a global knowledge, a global approach to understand the world and transform it. Okay, I'm sorry for being long.
Can I take, there's, I see a hand of questions. You, sir, over there, yes? And then I'll take rows afterwards.
Yeah, Muhammad Yassin, University of Udine. Thank you for this wonderful initiative. I'm asking, is there, this is intergenerational communication, but last year there were also young leaders, and I followed them. They were doing wonderful things. Some of them also I saw them now in the room. how are you going to link this in order to be sustainable, not to be only sporadic activities during the European development days? How can it be an activity of everyday activity, not only European or 2 days activities? And how are you going to overcome the obstacle about the vertical thinking or deep and lower thinking, and the horizontal, because you touch a lot of things, but you don't go deep into things? Thank you.
Thank you. Rose?
Thank you so much. I'm Rose Sakala from Malawi. My question is to you, the Vice President. You talked on mobilization of the youth. I'm pleased to announce that I've done that a lot in my country. My youth, our youth, or us in my country, we are mobilized, and we've done a lot on capacity building. I remember the past 2 years working with National Youth Council in bringing the youth to scale up their capacity. So we are mobilized, and we have now the basic skills which even our government is promoting through technical vocational skills. So what are you going to people like us who are mobilized and our capacity is enhanced from your perspective, sir? Thank you.
Thank you, Rose. I think I would like to give the opportunity to the panel to answer these questions, and I know that the Vice President has to leave. So perhaps I could start with Rupa. Can you give us very briefly an advice on how we're going to institutionalize critical thinking from your point of view?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I talk about institutionalizing critical thinking, I'm speaking specifically in my context. So I live in Jordan, and I work in a lot of Arab countries where education is lacking in quality. So you've got great mathematical skills and you read stories, but basically it's an educator reading to you or telling you information that you memorize and regurgitate. This little idea of critical thinking is really lacking and missing. So it stops people from being able to conceptualize the world on their own. It stops people from being able to take what this person says and what this person says and what this person says and come up with their own understanding of the world. And I think that that adds a lot to our problems in the world. As a global community, we've got all these issues and conflicts and radicalization and the things that you mentioned, that my scarf can be seen as a threat to people. It's something walking around Brussels that I've had people give me looks and I've had people say things. And I think if we were, instead of being fed information, whether it's traditional education or the media, if we were given information in a way that we are allowed to look at it and analyze it and critically assess what we believe in it is valuable and what is not, then it really would transform the way that we think, and that's what goes into transforming mindsets.
Thank you. I think I would like to ask first Vice President to answer the two slightly provocative question. Is internet bad for foreign policy? Is it more difficult to do, because you are former Minister of Foreign Affairs, so is it more difficult to do foreign policy in the time of the internet? And how do we help and mobilize young people around, not excluding Europe, but also including Europe?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, internet is. And it's sometimes good, it's sometimes bad. And I think for foreign policy, it's good, because it creates more transparency. If used well, it creates more understanding. But like any form of communication, it needs management, not in a sense of controlling the content, but of making sure that laws, but also social conventions in communication, are becoming common sense on the internet as well. And this is something that the internet sometimes, especially on social media, is still coming to terms with. That is why the European Commission has entered into a good agreement with a number of platforms of social media to make sure that hate speech is removed from the internet, because hate speech, you can say sticks and stones, etc., but hate speech does have the consequence of setting people up against each other, creating stereotypes, etc., etc. Because, racism and xenophobia, you're not born with it, this is taught. A child sees difference and either doesn't see it, most children won't see it, or when they see it, they're just curious and want to know what it means. And only those children who are taught to see difference as a threat or as something that you cannot accept become racists and xenophobes. So they can also be taught not to become it. So in that sense, I believe, making sure that children are not exposed to hatred and to inflammatory, xenophobic speech is important. On the issue of engaging, I absolutely accept the point that when you say, yeah, you've got it easy, you're saying we should get engaged, but I do get engaged, and where do I go from there? I get your point fully well. And I have to admit that my perspective is very, very Eurocentric, because I am in a society where young people are in a minority, and very often a very pampered minority, which means that they are extremely comfortable where they are and are not as easily mobilizable or to mobilize as you lot are. So I understand your point. But here you will have to teach me at some stage, and let's stay in touch, what the problems are that you encounter when engaged to actually have an impact. And my proposition to you is, let's stay in touch about this. You tell me, and then I could tell you what I could possibly do about it, or give you some advice. I'm willing to do that, but just accept the fact, please, that your circumstances are quite different, given also the demographic composition of Malawi than they are in the Netherlands or in Belgium or in other European places. And I believe that the biggest difference between many African societies and Asian societies and European societies is that you are in a position of, we've got very little and everything to gain. And in my society, people are in a position, we've got so much and everything to lose. And that is a completely different psychological position to be in. And if you could help me bring your generation in Europe more in a mode that they understand that they have everything to gain and not just everything to lose, this continent would be saved. I'm absolutely sure about that. But now, if we are in an attitude that we have everything to lose, then what you do, also politically, is mobilize around the theme of slowing down decline. But you accept the premise that there is decline. Now, if you want to step out of that premise, you need the input of young people from all over the world to show your hunger, your willingness to change, your willingness to grasp opportunity. You're not defeatist about your challenges. And because you have very little, but so much to gain. And please help us to educate European young people in the same vein. And let's stay in touch about that, and I'll be glad to see what I can do for you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Now, Vice President, I know that you have to,
yes, I'm sorry.
Unfortunately.
Yes. Thank you very much.
No, I'm very,
nice
very pleased that you joined us, and I am pleased that you were so passionate about this subject. Thank you so much. Thank you. We are now going to bring an extra chair on the stage, and I will invite Marietta and Christian to come on stage. While we do that, I would like to ask you to help me do a word cloud. If you have the app, then you go to the EDD app, you click on the top left menu tab, with the little stripes up there. You scroll down all the way, there is a word called word cloud. You select A1, because we are in auditorium A1, and you write the one word that for you has been generated in your mind about this session. So the little stripes up in the top left of the menu, you scroll out all the way to word cloud, you select A1, and you write the one word that you want to have. While we are getting Marietta and Christian mic'd up, I will do a very brief introduction, first of all, of Marietta, who is the Deputy Director General in DG DEFCO, and has had a long and sterling career, first in Slovenia, and then later in Europe. Christian Leffler who is now coming on stage. He is from Sweden, and he also has a long and stellar career in the European Union. Now he is Deputy Secretary General in the External Action Service, but has worked in many other fields. So first I would like each of you, if you don't mind, to give us a couple of brief words. And I will then ask David again to talk about his impressions so far. And we will then get on to the other three pitchers from Asia, Nestor, and Elsa. So, who goes first? Ladies first.
Ladies first. Good afternoon. It's an enormous pleasure and honor to be here today with you. I tend to believe I'm still young, at least, in my spirit. But it's an enormous pleasure to see so many young leaders that with the ability to change not only the life and the world in your country, but also globally. What is really fascinating is the energy that you are bringing and the optimism that is basically the inspiration, and I hope that could be the inspiration to other young leaders, not only to young leaders, but to your peers. So I would like really to encourage you to share your positive energy and the wind of change that you are bringing with others, with your friends, colleagues, because with your little examples or big examples, you can change a lot. And believe me, I'm talking from the experiences, because when I started to work, I started in a new country and with the new goals, and you can build everything from the scratch when you have a lot of energy, and use is a drive of change. It was proven, many times, and 2030 targets can only be implemented with the full engagement and full support of you, of young leaders, because this is something that is universally not only for us, older people, as someone said, but also for the future. And the future is you, the future is my son, the future is Tina's daughter, and I would like to keep that in mind for myself and for you, that we need to have this consensus on big things, and then we can agree that we disagree on small issues. But when it comes to climate change, we have only one planet. We cannot be parachuted to another one, as far as I know. So we have this obligation that we jointly take care about our planet. So we need to work together on all issues that are in the goals, from all nexuses, from food, water security, climate change, and then what is more important, all goals and all targets that concern you, meaning education, meaning, bring youth from apathy that I see in many countries now, that many youngsters are losing hope for the future, and you need to change this philosophy. You need to bring the new, fresh wind that, this globalization and internet is giving you with your examples to build the networks and mobilize, as Vice President has said, in order to bring the change that it's needed in your country. As Vice President of the Commission, Mogherini, yesterday beautifully said, we are all neighbors, and our security is your security is our security, and we need to build that together. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Marietta. Christian.
Yeah. In his introduction, First Vice President Timmermans, looking back, talked about how in his youth, which was pretty much my youth too, we went out to look elsewhere for ways to sort of realize our ambitions or engage in idealism and work for change. I think one of the big differences, and it's come out in the conversation so far, is we can all do that here and now. We don't need to go and look for it elsewhere, and we shouldn't. We should open up perspectives, we should engage, we should exchange. We should fight old-fashioned parochialism, but we shouldn't lose the local perspective, our local context, be it a local community, be it a cultural reference frame, whatever it is, because we need, particularly in a global society that is rapidly changing, that has all the advantages of greater interconnectivity, we need to keep a strong basis, a strong foundation in our identity, our roots, as a contribution to the diversity of the world we're trying to develop. I was asked to comment on, amongst other things, new development paradigms. We know the old ones. If we simplify, we've moved from the MDGs to the SDGs. I would like to put emphasis on some of the key words that have been mentioned, some maybe have not. Inclusion is an obvious one. Working to make sure that all of us, all of you, all of your peers have an opportunity to bring their contribution to society, to work to realize their ambitions. We don't all realize our ambitions. It would actually be quite sad if we did, because we should always try to push ourselves further. But we need to make sure that everyone has that opportunity. The new opportunities offered by connectivity, David and others have mentioned them, that's a fact. It's there. I'm not sure we're using it to best advantage yet, and I can come to that in a second. But to bring this together, I think one of the new paradigms for me would be participation. You are examples of it, because you've taken initiatives, you've engaged, you've developed organizations, groups, initiatives with friends, colleagues, and you participate, and that participation in itself brings change, partly by forcing organizations like the one I work for, or people like me, to take greater notice and to engage in dialogues and cooperation with you. That also means being more demanding. And I think that our societies generally people in our societies have become more demanding of public authority. That's a very good thing. It forces us into greater transparency, greater accountability about what we're doing, how we're doing it, why we're doing it. And that constant questioning, I think, also helps bring out new ideas, new visions, new opportunities. In moving forward, in finding new partnerships, therefore, through the participation, through engagement, we need to work at many more levels than we used to. It used to be fairly straightforward, working government to government, working between administrations, and then every now and then you threw in a handful of the usual suspects, the traditional stakeholders, the official civil society, so to speak. But we're way beyond that, and we need to look at all sorts of new levels, all sorts of new stakeholders, and bringing together coalitions of interest, innovating, finding new combinations to come together. And I stop there. I'm coming back to your initiatives, where you are, and the way you're taking this forward. I'll give you a quote from the person that I prefer to quote, which is my daughter, of your generation. And she says, "You don't get what you don't ask for." That, I think, is the approach you should take. Ask for it, push us, and see what we can deliver.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Christian. Now, David, how are we doing so far? How are we holding up? How are we dealing with the challenges? Do you see something emerging before we leave the floor to the three next young leaders?
So if I'm feeding back now to Ban Ki-moon, my boss, and he says to me, what came out of the sessions with younger people? I will say that we're seeing how young people are able to work together. They shine a light on the problems. They call for change. They see some of the challenges, and they're going to agitate for results. And you get that feeling. I had it really this morning and this afternoon. And so what does that mean for us? We've got to respect you. We've got to engage with you. We've got to appreciate your diversity, accept you, and enable you to contribute. And it's as simple as that. We've got to make the spaces. You come in. You help us to get it right. Let's move forward.
Thank you. And we will move forward. Aisha will talk to us about the new paradigms of development. Nesta will talk about how we foster entrepreneurship. And Elsa will talk about how we reform partnership. Aisha, take it away.
I'd firstly like to thank you all for giving us the opportunity to discuss these issues here on this privileged platform. When it comes to changing paradigms of development, there are three issues in particular that we as the youth feel are of utmost importance. Number one, we've been talking a lot about sustainable development in light of the SDGs, but we feel that it is equally important to talk about sustainable measures that capture this development. It may be very relevant here to give the capabilities approach of Amartya Sen, one of the founders of human development, and the idea that we should achieve the lives that we value the most. And if we take forward this approach, then we realize that poverty and development have new definitions altogether, because poverty then becomes the absence of a life that one values, whereas development becomes the attainment of a life that one values. So essentially, the idea is that of a human-centered approach. States and institutions remain of utmost importance, of course, but at the same time, it is us as humans who are the prime agency today, and that is something that needs to be reflected when we measure sustainable development. Secondly, moving on, we also feel that the capabilities and capacities of humans cannot always be captured by quantifiable measures. Measures such as GDP, GNP are of course all very valid indicators, but they often miss out on integral values of humans that cannot be quantified, and which is precisely where qualitative measures of assessment come in. And that's the second thing that we as the youth today feel. Thirdly, we also feel that there is a very strong need today to move from a needs-based approach to a rights-based approach. And when we talk about rights, there are two key terms. One, right holders, and two, duty bearers. And today, as the youth, we are both right holders as well as duty bearers, and it is important for all of us to embrace that. It is indeed a very challenging goal. It is difficult to achieve, but that should in no way that should discourage us from trying our utmost to achieve it. We are today a population of over 7 billion people, and about 50% of that population is aged 30 or under. So it is us, young people, who have both the right as well as the responsibility to demand that this development is captured in a very sustainable form. So summing up, my question to you all would be, in light of all these demands of having sustainable measures, and in light of the fact that the development community is now moving towards drafting indicators for the SDGs, how do we make sure that these indicators are themselves sustainable? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Aisha. Nesta, talk to us about how we foster entrepreneurship, because I think that is very important for all of us.
Thank you so much. I will talk in French because I'm more comfortable speaking French. Okay.
Oui.
Je voudrais d'abord remercier.
Could I start by thanking the European Union for having paid us the honor of inviting us to participate in this meeting. Let me entrust a secret to you. About a week ago, when I took my flight from Cotonou to Brussels, I stopped over in Abidjan. And then when I got on the flight, a person asked me when I was getting on the flight whether I worked for the UN. He's asked me why. He said, well, my brother, who went to university, who has 4 years of education after the back, does not have a job. I thought that if you were in the UN, you could perhaps find him some funding so that he could set up a project. Now, perhaps it's a great privilege for me to be assimilated to somebody working in the UN, and I have the great honor today of sitting on the same platform as Mr. Nabarro. But I think that this story only serves to emphasize the despair afflicting young people in Africa. The question of youth unemployment is a question of global importance, whether you're in Benin, Senegal, in Central Africa, or elsewhere in the world. Unemployment is one of the plagues afflicting young people the most, whichever country you live in. What we did was try to carry out a diagnosis of the situation. We think that there are two principal evils from which we as young people are suffering. Firstly, we have to undertake a reform of the educational system because there are several thousands of students leaving university every year, but they are not operational once they take up a job in industry. You have to develop, therefore, a new approach to education, focusing on entrepreneurship, so that when young people take up a post, they can satisfy the needs of their superiors and benefit from long-term employment. Then secondly, there are a lot of young people who have an idea about what they would like to do about a business which they would like to set up, but they don't have the money. If you go to a bank, you are asked to constitute a guarantee of between 5 and 10 million CFA francs. But if you had that amount of money, why would you have to go to a bank in the first place? What we therefore have to do today is ask the world to develop new approaches to seed capital, to financing startups, because that is capital. We are convinced that we can develop our world thanks to entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship can help to develop our world, but to do that, we need to set up a global fund for entrepreneurship, and that therefore means that we can provide young people with decent jobs. If young people do have decent jobs, they can contribute to creating wealth in their country. They can contribute to the country's economy, and they can be better educated. To be well educated, you need money. They would have better access to health care. There's a direct correlation, therefore, between youth employment, entrepreneurship, and all of the other sustainable development goals. Goal number 8 quite clearly stipulates that all young people are entitled to a decent job. And if only for that reason can I urge you to heed my call here today. In conclusion, I would be very interested to find out what the United Nations are doing to ensure that a fund could be set up at world level to support entrepreneurship for young people, because that would help to get people off the dole, and that would contribute to a better world, the better world in which we believe that is the key for development.
Merci Nestor, vous avez très bien pris la parole.
Thank you very much indeed, Nestor. You have spoken out, echoing what Christian said. You don't want anything that you haven't asked for.
At least talk to us about how we reform partnerships, because I know that's something which is really, really close to your heart.
Yes, it is. Right, so I'd like to start off by thanking you very much for this opportunity. Right, so I believe we all recognize the importance of partnerships as it is an SDG in itself. And I believe I speak for all the youth present that over the past week that we have been in Brussels, we have really appreciated how each and every SDG is intertwined with each other, and one is not independent of the other. And the bridge that brings all of them together is partnership. Now, partnership is not specifically a new concept. Partnership has been discussed severally. But as youth, we are proposing reforming partnership. And by this we mean, 1, starting off by moving away from a donor-recipient partnership to a more mutual beneficial partnership. And 2, partnerships that are more interested in people rather than in nations. And most specifically also, creating a safe space where partners do not feel obliged to accept certain terms and conditions of a partnership for fear of the repercussions, but also making sure that they have equal power, that they trust in the system, and they have a trust in the agreement that has been signed. And with these purposes, I pose the question that what is the international community really doing to foster partnerships where there's equal power between both partners, partnerships where creation of South-South partnerships do not threaten North-South partnerships. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Elsa. I'm going to go the other way around. David, would you like to come with a first reaction to the three pictures before we open we hear Marietta and Christian, and then we open it to the floor?
Yeah. So thank you. So again, if I stick with the expressions I used in the interval, first of all, shining a light on the challenges and calling for change. The light was shined first of all on the need for human-centered development with qualitative measures that focus on the state of the social contract between rights holders and duty bearers. There was a shining the light on the need for education that enables students to be operational and ready for employment, plus funding mechanisms that provide resources for entrepreneurship. And there was a strong call for people-centered, results-focused partnerships in which power was evenly balanced, trust was in good measure on all sides, and the space was safe enough so that nobody feels forced. Mm-hmm. Colleagues, this is the secret of what we need to do for the 2030 agenda. If I could get the suggestions that came from these three speakers mixed with the suggestions that came from the first three speakers, we would not have a problem. Because this is really at the heart of what, in my experience, based on trying to do this for 45 years, is absolutely critical. Getting the spaces right so that trust and respect are there, and that there's not bullying or any kind of pushing around in the power relationships, so that you really can get growth and advancement, which leads to empowerment, which is what development is all about. So as I finish this session and sort of get myself into the next few days and weeks ahead, I am truly inspired by what I'm hearing, because it really does give me extra energy to want to go ahead and try to achieve this. And secondly, I will work with the Secretary General, with our youth envoy, Ahmed Al-Handawi, and with the people involved in the major group for children and youth to make certain we get the right platforms so that these ideas, suggestions, and proposals can go on coming out, and that we can get young people better engaged in the business of sustainable development, so that next year there's lots more to report than we've got now. Thanks.
Thank you. That's a very good takeaway. Marietta, would you like to come with a couple of words?
It's impossible, to add something on what just David said. But
so you agree with him?
I fully agree with him. I would just like to add that we fully agree on challenges. We know what we are really going to do when it comes to tackling unemployment. Basically, you all know what we are trying to do also to do when it comes to education. You all know our programs like Erasmus Mundus. We work a lot on triangle cooperation, regional cooperation, thematic cooperation. So in all development programs, we are basically putting the emphasis on the issues that you just raised. And here is my commitment for the DG DevCo that we are going to continue in this direction. And it was a pleasure listening to all of your comments and proposals. Thank you very much.
Christian, would you like to say something?
Just a couple of words. Firstly, I very much liked Ayesha's comments on moving from a needs-based to a rights-based approach. A rights-based approach implies respect for those rights. Therefore, it implies respect for the individual. It doesn't treat the individual as just an element in a larger mass, nor as a client, but as a valid interlocutor, and I think that is a fundamental starting point. So I think I fully see that, and I fully agree with it. And on the economic structures and entrepreneurship, we've seen fundamental changes in economic structures in all parts of the world, in our societies and in many other societies across the world. The traditional models, including traditional employment models of developing larger corporations, developing manufacturing industries and whatever, no longer correspond to the reality in most parts of the world. They're part of it, but they're not at the center of it. What we need to do, therefore, is be much more sensitive to how we can develop models that allow people to move forward, integrate, participate in economic progress or economic development in new forms and in new ways. That's difficult, but it opened lots of opportunities. The relevance of education that you mentioned is highly important. Creating a facilitating framework, which often means allowing people to take more initiative and giving them the opportunity administratively, legally, and financially, I think are important elements. Last points on the changing partnerships. I come back to the issue of respect, and through respect, an issue of trust. The question of that it's what I talked about before in terms of, let's say, multi-level and many actors, bringing actors in on equal terms, building that trust. And that often means not so much trust between us and between the individual actors. Quite frankly, in many parts of the world, sadly, it means encouraging the authorities to show greater trust in the good sense of their people, of their citizens, and giving them the space to move forward, to take initiatives, to engage in dialogue, to come up with new ideas, to come up with constructive criticism in ways, and that's, if you like, the empowerment that David talked of as well.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead, Maita.
I just forgot to mention one thing. I'm extremely pleased that we have so many females among the young leaders.
Yes.
And that brings, not only it's a priority for my commissioner, but it's also a very important drive for change, because with the equal opportunities, with the rights and rights to startups and entrepreneurship, of the female, you know, also when it comes to rights of owning lands, etc., we will get to the implementation of SDGs that we need. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I will take one question from the audience. The lady, sorry if I don't see very well. Yes, you, please.
I just have one comment and one promise, and I think I'm going to start with the promise. My name is Diakoumba Gassama. I'm from Senegal. I'm here very lonely from the Women Major Group because some of my colleagues didn't get a visa. I want to promise to you, representative, diverse of the youth, that in a month, I think we are the 15th, yes, in a month we'll be in New York. And I've tweeted and I took notes, and we're going to share this with your colleagues from the Children Major Group. And then my comment/question, we were reminded that we are all privileged here. So I want to know what each of you is going to do when you go back home, wherever it is, to make sure that those who are left behind technologically from those political space, we will hear their voice. How are you going to take what you have heard and who you have met to bring others on board? Thank you.
Okay, we start from the other end. Elsa, 30 seconds. How are you gonna take this? What are you gonna do when you come home?
First and foremost, I've been further inspired, and so that's one thing which is definitely worth passing over. But also, we've been able to network and make some more connections to recreate and expand and scale up some of our initiatives which are already carried on. And by so doing, we'll be able to employ and reach out a lot more youth on ground.
Nestor, qu'est-ce que vous allez faire?
What are you going to do? Thank you very much. For those who know me, and I know there's some here, I regularly organize in West Africa free conferences for young people from West Africa. I'm already doing this, so we're not starting from scratch. And I would like to reiterate here that I'm going to continue doing this, because as I see it, when you're young and when we have the privilege to being in panels of this nature. Thank you.
I feel that the most important for me is that I've learned how to break free of stereotypes by interacting with people from all over the world. I've gotten to know a lot of good things about countries of whom I would only be hearing bad things. In the process, I've also made 15 very brilliant friends. And most importantly, I've learned a lot about gender and development and how that plays for us. In the next 15 years, I have my own business model back in Pakistan, where I work with women to develop them as entrepreneurs. And I feel that what I've learned over the past 2 days will help me to develop that further in a sustainable manner.
Thank you. Ruben, when you are back in the Philippines, how will you take this forward? What will you promise?
Thank you very much. My project basically focuses on peace education in Islam areas for Muslim children, and we are in a process of integration of including Christian children at the same time, because I think that we need to reshape how these children think of what culture is and what peace is and what we can do in reconciling both differences from these communities.
Thank you. Alan.
Well, I feel very inspired about everything I could learn here.
Sí, me
siento muy inspirado.
I feel very inspired by everything I've heard here. And I think it's important when I get back to Bolivia that I disseminate all this knowledge. And I think it'll be important we involve all youth organizations in the kind of debate we've been involved in this week. Thank you.
Last but not least, Ruba.
Yes. Okay, so first I would like to make sure that I express that I think that acknowledging privilege is a very important part of all of our lives. And I have to say to all of you here today that I am an amalgamation of every experience that I've ever had in my life. I am the product of every person that I've ever met and interacted with. And each one of you has added something to me as well. And I think that is something that we've all talked about among ourselves, the fact that we all have very different initiatives. We've had very different life experiences. We have different beliefs, different views. But when we came to talking about a vision for the world, it wasn't difficult to think about how we could all put it together and then apply it to each of our respective initiatives. And so that is something that I will take with me and I will use in my interaction with youth all around Jordan and the Arab world and kind of use it as a tool to make them think critically again and think about how to conceptualize different things from different viewpoints.
Thank you. Thank you, Ruba. It is now my job to thank the panel, but ask them please to remain seated. I will wrap up with one quote, and like Christian, the favorite person that I like to quote is my daughter as well. Because when I ask her something, and then she says no, and I said, no, but you have to do it anyway, she says, then why did you ask? And that is how I feel about you. We should not ask you if we are not prepared to take what you want to do into consideration, which is also why I'm now pleased to invite our Commissioner for International Cooperation and Development Cooperation, Mr. Neven Mimica, who has an inspiring idea for us.
So, very good afternoon to everyone. Dear colleagues, dear friends, warm greetings, warm welcome to this one of the last stages of our 10th edition of the European Development Days. What a nice occasion to thank all the young leaders for sharing your ideas and perspective on turning the Sustainable Development Goals from commitment into action. And this is exactly what we are doing, what we were doing these days. It is transiting from a wish list to to-do list. And we were very, very successful. You were very, very successful in that. Your presence here today, your engagement from social media to brainstorming labs to high-level panel sessions right next to world leaders shows that you are at the very heart of the action. You shape the future of development. Future of development is for you. These past few days and this special session today have confirmed that young people are the most powerful drivers of change. You bring a fresh and innovative vision of development. This is a vision we absolutely need for the successful implementation of the 2030 Agenda. In these challenging times, many people in Europe and across the world, especially young people, find it hard to keep their optimism for tomorrow. It is our ambition and indeed our duty to give them a reason to believe in a better future. This is what the Sustainable Development Goals are about. Never before did humanity have such a clear, universal blueprint for addressing the great common challenges we face, from climate change to fairer, more sustainable and more inclusive growth, from gender equality to the effective protection of human rights everywhere, from fragility and conflict to migration flows of unprecedented scale. Never before did humanity have a greater chance to ensure that the future, that your future, will be more prosperous, sustainable, and peaceful. But we'll have to work hard to make it happen. And we need the younger generations to be part of this effort from the very beginning. Your Young Leaders Program is now in its second year. It is a great pleasure to see it foster real, lasting partnerships. Today marks the official launch of the Young Leaders for Development online platform, an initiative of our young leaders from this and last year to share their stories and opinions and showcase their projects. I would like to thank the two leading editors present here today, Shakira Chunara from South Africa and Marion Osier from the United Kingdom. They have worked hard to get this platform online. Do make sure to check it out. 16 young leaders have brought their experiences to the table here in Brussels. I hope you will now take home the knowledge and ideas gained from your time at the European Development Days. But this is not the end of it. We expect more from you. I expect more from you. For me, you are not just our partners of today, but the leaders of tomorrow. I hope to see you become the architects of a change in your communities and your countries. I hope that in a few years' time, we will be inviting these brilliant young minds back to the European Development Days as civil society leaders, company CEOs, or even heads of state. So, once again, thank you. Thank you for the incredible work you do at home and for being here to share your vision with us. Thank you very much.